Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, band. You know, we planned, well, you know what they say, you make plans and God laughs, but I knew I wanted to do a series in February on relationships, and as I was putting that together, it just so happened that the week before Valentine's Day, we'd do our vow renewal, and I would talk today about marriage and committed relationships, and we just happened to this be the day that Trey could be here to do his workshop on planned giving, and it was just so funny that we have one of the top divorce attorneys in the city on the day that we're talking about marriage and a committed relationship. So if my sermon doesn't get you where you need to go, talk to Trey. We are full service here at Unity. So instead of starting with a joke today, I want to share with you something that my friend Marilyn sent to me in an email this week. It's called 6 Little Stories. Story number 1. Once all the villagers decided to pray for rain, and on the day of the prayer, all the people gathered, but only one little boy came with an umbrella. That is faith. Story 2. When you throw babies in the air, they laugh because they know you will catch them. This is trust. Number 3, every night we go to bed without any assurance of being alive the next morning, but we still set the alarm to wake up. That's hope. Number 4, we plan big things for tomorrow in spite of zero knowledge of the future. That is confidence. Number 5, we see the suffering in our world, and still we marry and have children. This is love. And number 6, on an old man's shirt was written a sentence, I am not 80 years old. I am 16 with 64 years of experience. That's attitude. Isn't that great? So we're exploring the mystery and the power of relationships this February, and last month we spoke about relationship from the highest philosophical understanding of the 3 faces of God, how we are in relationship to reality, to God, and to ourselves, and how I believe that when we really begin to live from this place of the indwelling Christ mind, that it changes everything in all of our relationships. And so today we're talking about committed relationships, marriage. Next week I'll be talking about the power of friendship. And on the 4th and final week of the month, it'll be our Black History Month celebration. And we'll be speaking about community, something that has changed my life, being a part of a spiritual community over the years, and how I believe it's an untapped power in your life as well if you aren't fully involved in a community. And we're a great community. But we'll be celebrating it. The beloved community was a phrase that Dr. Martin Luther King used a lot, and that's what we'll be speaking about. So today, I mentioned last week that there are times that a teacher will share something from depth of knowledge and mastery of the subject, and then sometimes it's more theoretical. So I said marriage and long-lasting, healthy relationships is not, well, I'm learning, I'll just say that. I want to say, too, that the spiritual principles I feel so committed and so connected to, and I know that they are universal, and I have tried and practiced them in many, many ways. I really should have had Reverend Karen give the talk today. I think she and William have been married 32 years. And they really demonstrate the points that I'm talking about today. There are 3 things that I want to share with you today that I think will help us in our committed relationships, whether or not we have one, whether or not we were open to the possibility. So when I'm giving a sermon, a message, a talk, a lesson, I usually try and speak something universal, something that all of us can relate to. And I know that not all of us are married or in a committed relationship, and even of the ones who are single, not everyone is open to it. I had a couple in the line after the first service says, nope, I'm done. And I was like, that's great. So I think you'll still find value here because these principles are universal, and you will find a way to take it up and practice it in your life. So the 3 things I want to talk about today: commitment, flexibility, and trust. Things that I feel are essential to building strong, committed relationships. So commitment, that has changed in our culture. Have you noticed that? Not that long ago, it was quite a stigma for people to be divorced. It was, they weren't welcome in some churches. There were, a lot of things you couldn't do as a divorced person in church. There were things even in legally that, women particularly got the short end of the stick a lot. And Trey can tell you about that. And there's still a lot of protections that women need when it comes to our marriage laws. I forgot to mention, too, Trey created something called the Guide to Good Divorce, which is, he's really made a name for himself. You may have seen it in the Houston Chronicle and other places, but it's changed. That in itself is a radical notion that we could have good divorce, because it used to be so stigmatized. But now we're moving into a different way. There's still little pockets of it, though. I remember a friend of mine was applying for an HOA, Homeowners Association. She was purchasing a vacation home in Colorado, and she asked me to be a reference. And she asked that I not mention dyed red hair or multiple divorces. So I obliged. So one of the things that I'm aware of around this idea of commitment, that it's changed in our understanding, that what exactly are we committed to? Are we committed to the idea of a marriage and we're going to stay no matter what because that's the way we were raised, that's what we're supposed to do? Is that commitment? What I'm going to offer us is a different view on that. Barbara DeAngelis, do you remember her? She's a speaker and author. She and her ex-husband had a spectacular divorce very publicly, and somebody interviewed her about it, and she said, well, here's the way I understand it. We come into this life and we choose either one of two things, stability or growth. And if we choose growth, we often don't grow in the same way and at the same rate as our partner, and we can't stay together. Is that making any sense to some of you? Yeah. And this 20 years ago, I heard her say that, and it stayed with me a lot. And as I was preparing for today's message, I thought there's more here than just stable or grow. There's more here, that we can actually have both. And what would that look like if we were to create a sense of strong commitment, our relationship, and still be committed to our individual spiritual growth? So the commitment that I think we're called to make in marriage is not just commitment to stay, but commitment to grow individually and commitment to your partner's growth as well. One of the reasons why we have to do this is because if you're in, and I know that William and Karen are so both committed to their own individual growth, but Karen shared some of the stories with me. I'm not going to tell your stories, but about how there were different times where it felt like that they weren't together. I'll use my finger puppet example. You start together, you're all in the same place. Maybe you met at church in that new Sunday school class, and it's just, it's incredible, and we're in love, and we see things exactly the same, and we're going to be this way forever. And then things happen in our lives, and there's this gulf because one partner has been doing a lot of growth and a lot of work, and they're here, and the other partner is here, and there's a feeling, and this is often the case in New Thought churches, it's just bothering you that I keep doing this. I'm going to come to this. Where it ends. And what if we could hold a commitment that we will see each other's growth until we come back together? And then maybe next time it's this partner who's going to be out ahead a little bit. But we keep this commitment to our growth and to that of our partner, and understand that there will be times that we're not in complete alignment like we were at the beginning. I read a novel once, and there was a woman who had been married for 60 years, and there was a younger woman who was asking her for advice, and how do you make it work? And she said, honey, I've been married at least 4 times. Now, his name is John, and he has the same driver's license every time, but he is not the man I married 60 years ago. That there's something about change, that we can grow. And if we can hold this commitment, not just to the relationship, but to ourselves, to commit to love ourselves and be true to ourselves, I think then when we do have those moments of coming into alignment again, it's in a whole new way. The marriage itself will have grown. But this requires something. And I really struggled with the right word today. Flexibility is the word that I landed on. That's what I want to talk about as the second component needed here. The other word that came to mind a lot was spaciousness. We must be spacious and generous in the way we hold our relationship in this way, that we give people space to be who they are. And you're going to need to do that because, I don't know if you know this, but she's not perfect. He's not perfect. You may think that he is, especially when it starts. Do you all know that phase? When, you hear the voices like Julia Laskowski, oh, and it's just lovely, and we're frolicking into eternity hand in hand. It's going to be beautiful. We're so in love. I finally found him. Yeah, We've all been there. It's just amazing. And then something happens. Son says to his father, Dad, I heard that in some parts of the world a man doesn't know his wife until they marry. And he says, Son, that's true everywhere. Harville Hendricks is a therapist and author from Dallas. He wrote a book in the 80s that was quite successful called Getting the Love You Want. You remember this book? He's also the founder of Imago Therapy. It's a theory of relationships. And in this theory, in Imago theory, the idea is this. When you first came into the dawnings of consciousness within your mother's womb, you had all of your needs met. The temperature stayed the same. You weren't hungry. You were fed from your mother's body. You were protected by her body. You heard the soothing sound of her heartbeat. You were in this Edenic, idyllic state of ultimate connection and oneness and love. In many ways, that is very true to who we are. In the universe, we are always in that state, but as an unconscious child in the womb, we had that experience, and it was imprinted upon our awareness in our minds. And according to Imago theory, the moment we were born, we were betrayed by life. We got hungry, we were cold, we had moments of what we would consider separation, and we struggled. And so this is the part of the theory that it's kind of like the good news, bad news. We have this idea, and it's subconscious, it's pre-verbal, and according to Hendricks and others, it's universal, that when we meet a new partner, we have an unspoken, unconscious expectation that they will take us back to that womb-like existence of perfect peace and well-being. I guess you probably figured out what the bad news is. Impossible. Cannot work. And we don't even know we have that expectation. But that feeling of being in love, at least in the beginning, it's tied up in that idea that now finally this is going to be what I've been looking for my whole life. He says this, for some reason we enter marriage with the expectation that our partners will magically restore this feeling of wholeness. It is as if they hold the key to a long ago kingdom, and all we have to do is persuade them to unlock the door. Their failure to do so is one of the main reasons for our eventual unhappiness. So what do we do with that? I think if we go back to the idea that with our commitment we build a container. And within that container we bring an idea of flexibility and spaciousness, and we allow our partner to be human. And we begin to build a life based upon truly being who we are, bringing ourselves authentically in our humanness. And here's the thing. They're not what you hope they would be, but you're not what they hope they would be, what you would be either. If we can, within this container of commitment filled with this sense of spaciousness, we will be disappointed and frustrated by our partner and by our spouse. It will happen. And we will disappoint and frustrate our partner and our spouse. We will do so. But with that sense of spaciousness and commitment, we know that we will come back into a place of healing. Here's the The really strange thing, here's the good news in imago theory, is that when we do have this birth experience and we're working with our parents, I say this a lot, I didn't coin the phrase, but if it's not one thing, it's your mother, or your father, that we each carry imprinted wounds of, which in Unity we would call error thinking, false beliefs that we carry forward. And the person that we're attracted to is there. We have this unconscious belief they're going to heal it, and in truth, they will be the person to trigger it. They will have a pattern of behavior and thinking that will mimic or echo the parent who wounded us. I know, that's harsh. And when we see that pattern revealed, oftentimes that's when we go, nope, I've been here before, I'm done, I'm out of here, and we end. And what the idea behind imago therapy is that if we will stay with it, we have the opportunity to heal the old wound in the new relationship. And that requires the third thing I want to offer to you today, which is trust. And can you trust, even though he's doing that crazy stuff which he knows makes you crazy? He's doing it, and it's just like what your dad used to do, your mom used to do. If he knows and you're doing it, if you can just maybe have trust that perhaps underneath that, he actually does want the best for you and your marriage. And she does have your best interests at heart. My dear friend Randall, where are you, Randall? Randall Brailsford is a wonderful therapist, and he counsels here at the church some, and he's teaching Sunday school. You're very involved here. Randall and I had dinner to celebrate his birthday this week, and he shared with me something that just stayed with me. He said, there is a second secret vow in almost every marriage, and it goes something like this. It's not spoken. I will never let you hurt me like that again. And a door is closed. The trust has been broken. And to the degree that we hold to that second vow, I think the more likely that authentic connection, the possibility of healing and a restoration of wholeness becomes smaller and smaller. Trust. Why is it that when we toss that baby in the air, it laughs? Why? Because it knows you will catch it. Sometimes our partner will not be there for us the way we need them to be. And so what we want to be, we'll take this vow, I'm not going to trust you again in that way. And here's where I think our unity teaching really comes into play. What if we could trust ourselves to be okay and to forgive? What if we could trust God that no matter what happens in this relationship, I know that I am the wholeness of God being expressed in a human lifetime. And I'm willing to trust my partner enough to stay engaged and do this work that we're called to do for both of our healing. Commitment, flexibility, and trust. Here come the disclaimers. Sometimes the right thing to do is to end the relationship. And we can't tell you, no one can tell you when that is, but you'll know. You'll know that you've done all you can do. Maybe your partner isn't willing to meet you in this conversation in an authentic way. But I do believe that even at the end of that marriage, of that relationship, we can show up as who we are. And we can end it in kindness, in authenticity, and in compassion, and consciously. I think it's one of the growing edges of our teaching is we need to learn how to end things in consciousness. So what we often do is get mad and hurt and run away. And the last thing, this I really, as I said, I struggled a little bit with this talk. I know that Valentine's Day is hard for single people because I've been there. And I know hearing a talk about marriage and committed relationship can be hard if you're single. I know that there are people in this room who have been hurt again and again. And the idea of opening up to the possibility of being in a relationship, even that is hurtful and painful. So I'm going to end by speaking to you. And I'm going to ask that if in your heart of hearts there is still a desire to have healthy, loving, supportive companionship, and ask you not to give up. The same 3 words I'm using to marriage, I'm going to use to you in your desire to attract it into your experience. First, commit. Commit to the practice of seeing it as a possibility, and commit to the practice of, here's the hard one, of being the kind of person that the kind of person you want to be with would want to be with. Do I need to say that again? Commit to being the kind of person that your dream partner would want to be with. I'm going to invite you to be flexible because he probably will not show up on your timetable. He may come with things that you didn't want and may come without things that you did. She may not look the way you thought she was going to look. She may not be from the background you thought she was going to be from. This is not about the externals. This is about finding a soul that you can enter into partnership with. And lastly, I'm going to ask you to trust. You know, Emily Cady says in Lessons in Truth that desire is God tapping at the door of your mind, seeking to give you your next greater good. If you desire in your heart a partner, it's for you. God is tapping at your door saying, it's here if you want it. It is God's pleasure to give us the kingdom. We are here to reveal, to manifest the desires of our heart. Don't give up. I'd like to close with a poem by David Whyte. Haven't thought of it in years. Gene mentioned it on Friday night. Not this poem, but the poet, David Whyte. He's an amazing soul. I got to sing with him, for him, at an event, the AG&T conference in Palm Springs years ago. And he read this poem, and something in me came alive, so I want to share it with you today. There's a faith in loving fiercely the one who is rightfully yours, especially if you have waited years, and especially if part of you never believed you could deserve this loved and beckoning hand held out to you this way. I'm thinking of faith now, and the testaments of loneliness, and what we feel we are worthy of in this world. What we feel we are worthy of in this world. Years ago in the Hebrides, I remember an old man who would walk every morning on the gray stones to the shore of baying seals, who would press his hat to his chest in the blustering salt wind and say his prayer to the turbulent Jesus hidden in the waters. And I think of the story of the storm and the people waking and seeing the distant yet familiar figure far across the water, calling and walking toward them. And how we are all preparing for that abrupt waking and that calling and that moment when we have to say yes. Except it will not come so grandly and so biblically, but more subtly and intimately in the face of the one you know you have to love. So that when we finally step out of the boat, toward them we find everything holds us, everything confirms our courage. And if you wanted to drown, you could, but you don't. Because finally, after all this struggle and all these years, you don't want to anymore. You've simply had enough of drowning, and you want to live, and you want to love, and you will walk across any territory, in any darkness, however fluid and however dangerous, to take the hand, the one life you know belongs in yours. God bless you. Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.